Hi guys, my name is Nengi and I want to thank you for stopping by and watching this video. In this video, we're going to talk about what Bitcoin is. But before we get started, if you have not seen the first two videos, I would highly suggest that you go back and watch them because that will give you the background on how we got to this slide. So, as we saw in the last video, there was a financial crisis that just brought the whole industry to a halt, and banks had to be bailed out. So in 2008, a gentleman by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto introduced a new concept, a new way of looking at money, and he called it Bitcoin. That white paper was actually released to a mailing list. And what he was really trying to do is solve a problem, like provide a solution. And what I would like to do is actually go over the characteristics of Bitcoin so you can see what he was thinking in terms of solving this problem. So the number one thing is that Bitcoin, the way it's built, it's actually decentralized. And what that means is that there's a group of people in the network that control their transactions and verify it. So it's not based just on one organization, let's say the government or a central bank, to make decisions. This is really something that is controlled by a network, right? So as we saw earlier, if the centralized organization makes bad decisions, guess what? Kablooey. The other reason is really that transactions are instantaneous. If you ever had to transfer money, let's say you are an export-import and you're trying to purchase something from overseas, it takes a heck of a lot for your bank to transfer money, to get it converted, and then transfer to the other bank, and then finally to reach transaction. In this case, all you have to do literally is hit a button and bada boom, bada bing, transaction has happened. The other thing is, because transactions are fast and you don't have to go through multiple layers to actually complete it, the fees are lower. They're much, much lower. If you were to send, let's say, a wire, and the person receiving it needs that in euro, your bank has to find a third party to actually convert your USD dollars into euro. People never think about these things, but if you ever bought something online and you look at your credit card statement and it says foreign transaction fee, yeah, that's what's happening. All right. And because of that, that actually raises the fees. And finally, this is the way he built it. It enabled peer-to-peer transaction. There is no middleman that is required to actually verify your identity and your details and the other person's identity and details. That middleman is eliminated. So these are the main keys that he came up with, that he brought forth to actually solve this problem. So the way he also set this up, which I thought was actually very fascinating, not only did he want to make this as simple as possible, he also really thought and said, you know, organizations or countries just print money whenever they want to, but that lowers the value of that currency. It devalues it. So he also actually thought about how he can go about and make this ecosystem become like gold. So just like gold, gold is actually scarce. And for Bitcoin, the scarcity is that there are only 20 million Bitcoins that can be mined. Currently, there are 12 million, about 12 million, probably that number has gone up since then, that are in circulation. But once it hits 21 million, no more Bitcoins can be mined. So that scarcity kind of mirrors how gold is scarce as well. And because of this scarcity, it actually places a higher value. Well, it doesn't really place a higher value, but what it does is really it gives it a better way of holding that value, because you can't just automatically decide, oh, I'm going to print money and devalue it. It's scarce. If you have 21 million, that's it, 21 millions, and that's all you have to play with. So if there's more demand, obviously the price rises. If there's less demand, price goes down. But at the same time, you can't really increase that amount. And then the other thing that he thought about is that even though gold is trusted by a lot of people, the one thing that it was not good at is in payments. So for example, if I walked into a coffee shop and I wanted to buy a cup of coffee, I wouldn't be able to just look at my big chunk of metal and say, okay, let me cut a piece of this. Is here you go, here's 23 grams out of the whole bullion that you're holding. So in the case of Bitcoin, what he decided to do is he made it divisible so that it can be, you can actually hold. So look at that, 0.000001 bitcoins is one satoshi. So it's actually divisible, and that helps when you're making transactions, because not everything, you know, is straight 23 or 25 or whatever fixed amount it is. In this case, you can actually divide it up to a penny or whatever it is that you need. So having said that, so the scarcity factor and the divisibility makes this actually even better than gold. So you're probably wondering, how does Bitcoin work? So first of all, when a transaction happens, this transaction is actually recorded on a public ledger called a blockchain. And what we mean by transaction is, if I decide to send money, let's say to purchase some jewelry on a website, and I hit pay, that transaction is what we're talking about. So that gets recorded on the public ledger. Now, how does that get verified? It's done by miners. So miners take that transaction, they verify that this address does indeed have the correct amount that's needed, and that it's actually going to whatever address you gave it, right? And once that's verified, and there's actually a certain number of miners that have to verify a transaction for them to decide that this is a valid transaction within the ecosystem, and that's when it gets recorded on the blockchain. Now, the way that the miners actually mine Bitcoin, they spend a lot of energy trying to solve this mathematical problem. And once a miner solves this problem, they get rewarded by a Bitcoin. And that's how it's created. Simple, right? Yeah, it's not. There's actually a lot more in-depth information that's available about the blockchain, how miners verify transactions, how this whole thing works. And the beauty of it is there's something called a white paper that Satoshi Nakamoto wrote. If you want to see how all these pieces work with the hashing and whatnot, it's all there. It's 9 pages. It was written elegantly for someone like me to be able to read it and kind of sort of understand it. But so that's the end of this presentation. Again, I want to thank you for stopping by, watching it. I hope you got some value out of it. The next video is going to talk about the challenges that Bitcoin is facing. So if you have any questions, please feel free to either connect with me or leave them down below. And please hit next and proceed to the next video. All right, thank you.